meeting to order today, Monday, April 29th. Thank you all for joining us. And we will, everybody look at the agenda and see if everything looks good with that and we don't need to add anything to the agenda. Be happy to entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Moved in second. All in favor? Aye. George, are you able to hear us?
I am, and I'm
Great.
an aye.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you very much. And so we will follow the agenda as presented. And hopefully everyone's had a chance to look at the April 18th special meeting minutes.
I move to approve.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Second. All in favor? Aye. Thank you all. The ayes have it. And now we're to public comment. Do we have anyone here for public comment today? Okay, thank you very much. We we are going to have a financial overview. I believe Paige is going to do that for us, and we appreciate that, Paige. I think you've updated some information or providing more information since last time. So if you want to take over and share that, please.
Yeah, so this is our financial overview. What we have here is our beginning balance, your total revenues, which will hold your Article 39, and your bond proceeds. Our total expenditure lines includes the projected school expenditures, what we're thinking the schools will spend on their projects throughout that fiscal year, and debt service. That'll bring us to our revenues over or under our expenditures, which when combined with our beginning balance gives us our estimated fund balance. We've also removed any unspent bond proceeds. So for example, this year we're going to be receiving bond proceeds for specific projects. Those funds are restricted for the use of those projects as they're being spent. So the big question from last meeting, and something we discussed before, but definitely wanted to bring forward to you guys again so you all feel comfortable moving into your decision for today, is the 15 million and how did we get there? If we look at FY24 and the project and approval amount, that was a large amount that we approved last year. And then if we look at FY26, what we've done is took a look at the school's secondary priority lists. You can see that we've projected about 55 million. On that secondary priority list, Asheville City Schools has $4 million for Asheville High School. And then Buncombe County Schools also has a $40 million project on there for Glen Arden. So what we're trying to do is use that future thinking mentality and make sure that we're able to fund those large projects along with a few others. We're not just funding 2 projects next year. Gives us a little bit more to work with. So we're kind of sandwiched in between 2 major years. The other thing that we're working on is having a more sustainable financial plan. So not debt financing everything. And so making sure that we're able to pay-go a portion of the projects and leverage that to save us on interest costs. That's how we arrive at that 15 million, kind of a balance between both those scenarios there. We had also spoken about what projects are we going to debt finance and what are we going to pay cash for. We've talked as a team and that decision is best made during the issuance year, the year that we're going to issue the debt. So we can see where the projects are at, take a look at our fund balance and really make a good decision on how much should we debt finance versus how much we can pay go in a specific time before we go out to issue debt. So that will be our plan going forward. So there's no pay-go versus debt finance list for you all today. That's something that we'll think about in the issuance year FY26.
Just a couple of questions too while we're looking at this, and thank you for providing this information so we get a real good sense of of where we are with the funding this year. And we knew last year when we approved the 40 million, we all, I mean, the schools, we all knew that that was a big amount and that we would not be approving that amount this year. So everybody is prepared for that. So I think we're in good shape there. And then also we understand that going forward, right, we're wanting to be able to do some PAYGO versus in the past with this funds, we've always, as far as I know, from the time I've been on, we've done debt financing. So we're making those adjustments. So thank you for clarifying that all for this year and where we are with that 15 million. And I do just want to ask a question here, just for clarity, especially if there's others that are paying attention and everything. So when we do this on FY24, the project approval amount, that was actually 40 million. So can you speak to what this additional is in there? And also when we did that last year, typically we have been doing debt financing. And this is showing that some of this is debt financing and some of this is PAYGO. And that's a pretty big difference from what we had discussed last year. So can you address that, please?
Yes, of course. So the 46 million, the reason why there's an additional 6 million is because there were a couple of projects that did not get issued with the FY24 issuance. We had a W.D. Williams and I believe a Montfort school that just aren't progressed enough to be able to issue debt for them, and thought it would be best to wait until those projects have started making some more progress. So that's why you see 46 rather than 40. And as far as the difference between the financing and the PAYGO portion, we did assume that we will debt finance that full 24 amount that was approved. As we're moving into this hybrid situation, we'll be making that decision on what we issue in FY26, which will include both years. So we're thinking to try and bring that sustainability in when we make that decision in FY26, instead of just assuming that, well, that year we're gonna debt finance, when we could make a decision in FY26 that's more sustainable for the fund at that time.
Okay. Any other questions around that? Just I want to make sure that we're clear, since that was a little bit different than what we had discussed last year.
So is it going forward to 2025, is 2.1 million, is all you project are being available?
So the estimated available fund balance is what you want to look at for being available. At the bottom, that 2.1 million possible potential cost avoidance, that's the interest savings that we're projecting from doing PAYGO. Yeah, sorry, it is at the bottom there, so you might think that's, yep.
For those of us who need help, it's a little small.
Okay, I hear you. I'm trying to improve.
Okay, but that answered your question, Matt. Thank you, Paige.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, so I do want to emphasize one of the things that Matt and Paige have brought forward in several of the prior meetings, and that kind of really started out with the strategy of how we kind of manage the cash within the fund. And what they're really starting to do with this, and that's why they've broken out the projected approval amount for your projects, and then the difference between the debt amount and PAYGO, and then the value of this whole idea of cost avoidance. So those are real numbers that you would have to generate an additional revenue to pay for if we debt financed everything. So that's where we're kind of really thinking long-term of how do we continue to deliver the most capital projects completed with the amount of revenue that we have. And think again, it's a very volatile revenue source. So we've strong sales tax and stuff within Asheville. But again, it's volatile. So I think that the future and the stability of the fund for long-term, you're always going to have students and you're always going to have capital needs to support that infrastructure. And so doing what we can to ensure that the balance and the stability of this fund long-term is the best, considering we've got really historical aging infrastructure. And that's really what we want long-term. We don't want to drive down fund balance and they have to wait for years to replenish fund balance.
Okay, thank you for that extra clarification. Appreciate it. Okay, Paige, please continue.
That's the financial overview. So if there's any other additional questions or anything you'd like to discuss about, I want to make sure everyone feels comfortable moving in, that we're working with that 15 million and everyone's on board and feeling comfortable. So you guys make your decision today.
Any other questions for Paige around the financials? Excellent.
Just a reminder of what we're looking at today, Asheville City Schools brought forward $4.8 million worth of requests, and Buncombe County Schools brought forward $32.7 million for a total of $37.4 million of project requests. I did include in your handouts the lists of both the high priority and secondary priority for both of those schools. So you can look there to see all the details of all the projects. There was a question brought up last meeting regarding average daily membership. I pulled down some data here just to give you guys a sense of what that would look like with our scenario today. So for this school year, the average daily membership for Asheville City Schools is around 4,000. Buncombe County Schools is around 22. That gives a split of about 15% to 85%. If we were to apply that to the 15 million that we have for this year, that would put Asheville City Schools around 2.3 million, Buncombe County Schools around 12.7. In the past, starting with 1983 session law, we did use this method of allocating out funds based on the average daily membership between the two schools. That was changed in 2015. That was removed and it was changed to enforce the project based on priority. And that was really because average daily membership isn't a great indicator of what the school's capital needs are. We don't know, it doesn't determine where their buildings are at, how old they are, how often they're being maintained. So we really went with this priority methodology to make it a better process for the schools.
And I'll speak to that a little bit. I think partly at the time also, I think there were some rather large projects coming on, and so I don't know who all some went and asked for the change in this at the legislative level so that there was more flexibility instead of that strict amount. But I do think the key thing, so it was changed then, but I do think the key thing also to notice is it talks about the prioritization.
Mm-hmm.
And the reality is that when you look at, and it's an important thing for us to talk about, and it was brought up last time, and I do think we should have awareness because when we talk about the sustainability of this funding, we also have to think about that with the overall schools. And when you look at, I think, the footprint of the schools, so there's the ADM and what's that percentage, and then the footprint of the schools, and basically I think Buncombe County Schools is about 5 times footprint at least, maybe more. Clark could probably speak to that. But
I don't know the exact times larger, but it's, we have 45 facilities. What do y'all have, 9?
Yeah, so
4 million square feet.
So it is something that's we definitely have to take into account. And just because, so when that was changed, and thank you all for pulling this information and looking at the funding history, right? And we see that over these past few years, it's been anywhere between 23 and 34, or 29, 23, 34%. So I do think that's something that we have to think about when we have this many schools and looking at the long term with that, is that we have to be able to consider that when we're making these decisions too.
Can I just add
Yes, you may.
on what you said? So I took the data you sent. I appreciate you sending it over. And I just took it one step further, just from 2019 to 2024, just out of curiosity, like based on our actual population, like what that difference would have been had the rule never changed. And it was an over $20 million difference that it made just since 2019. And I get the prioritization, but somehow it just seems like it works out in Buncombe County's favor, I don't know what it looked like from 2016 to 2018, so I'm not sure if maybe it swung the other way during that time. But just looking at this, it just, I don't know, it just, I get that maybe it needed to be changed, but like $20 million is a lot.
It's unfortunate that we can't look at, we aren't prioritizing either, looking at the years, the age of some of those buildings. Because older the building, the more challenging it is going to be to upkeep them. So I have some concerns that we are not necessarily looking at how old some of the facilities are and the cost of upkeep of those older facilities. Mr. Farouk, if we are looking at ADM specifically, are we then going to be in violation of the session law? Since that has come up about funding by ADM, since it changed from 83 to 2015.
Are you, which?
So if we say that we're gonna allocate our funds today based on ADM, are we going to then be in violation of the 2015 session law?
That session law basically says that you use your discretion and prioritize and distribute it with your best efforts. So I don't know that that would be, as long as you're prioritizing. and
But if we're
spreading.
prioritizing based on ADM specifically, which is, I think, part of the question that keeps coming up,
Let me pull.
is allocating by ADM.
So
So I might be misreading.
We're not
but-
restricted to that, but it's up to this committee to prioritize. So we make those decisions
So
however we wanna
unders-
prioritize.
The other side is the new.
Terry, can I ask a question?
Yes, George.
So, or just a comment, because I'm wearing, in this question, wearing two hats. One, wanting to be a objective member of the Capitol Commission, but also recognizing that I'm also wearing a hat as a Asheville City School Board member. And this discussion about looking at ADM, but also think about priorities. I do want us to keep in mind that in understanding that this year is a very different conversation than the last 3 years, but in the last 3 years, we were able to fund 100% of the requests. And so a conversation about the percentages over the last 3 years of, how much ACS got versus how much BCS got feels a little moot when 100% was funded. I mean, I get it. I do understand, like Buncombe County for sure, 5 times the size of Asheville City Schools, in terms of ADM, in terms of number of schools, in terms of square footage, roof space, et cetera, understandably, it's 85% of the needs. I think that is indisputable, but I also feel like looking at the funding history, if we're looking at the last 3 years, for example, where the funding years 23 and 22, especially where you see the most dramatic deviance from that 15% to 85%, both of those years, we were able to fund both districts at the full amount requested. So I'm not saying that to stifle the conversation, because I think it's a valid one, but I also don't want to lose that forest for the trees.
And I think part of the conversation just going forward, since this was brought up in those last discussions, is right, as we're prioritizing. So to your point, yes, we were able to do that. And then we have to be able to look at both of the requests coming in from both school districts and then make those decisions. And right, are there certain priorities that one district may be asking for over the other that need to be handled in a timely manner, right?
Yeah, for sure.
One thing that comes to my mind is I know when I go around the school, the lobby upfits, those upgrades, right? We have 45 schools right in Buncombe County, and it's taken quite a bit of time to get to that. And so sometimes we may have to weigh, well, is that a priority over whatever something else may be asked for? And that's just part of that discussion that we have to have each year. And it's just, I think, important for us to realize just because we've been funding at a certain percentage doesn't mean that that is automatically assumed that that is going to happen each year, because it is our job to prioritize and what's brought to us. Okay. Was there any other comments, questions around that issue from any of the board members? Okay.
So let me just say, if I'm doing the math correctly, on the two requests, the historic, then, I just want to clarify, the historic funding has sort of been a 2/3, 1/3 between the school districts. I'm just averaging out here, nothing fancy. And it looks like based on that, then Asheville City Schools came in with their request at about that historic funding of about 33%. And the 32.6 from Buncombe County is 200% of what is available for the year. Am I doing that right?
That sounds
Okay,
accurate,
yeah,
yes.
thanks. I just wanted to clarify that my math is a little bit over here.
Okay, Paige?
We did start speaking about this, but I did want to provide the funding history, just to give you guys an idea of how we funded between Asheville City Schools and Buncombe County Schools, historically.
Sorry to give you a segue to that.
Yeah, thank you. So as you can see, average for Asheville City Schools, usually around 8 million, 28% of the total amount funded. And then for Buncombe County Schools, 20 million with 72 of the amount funded. I've put together two scenarios, and really scenario one, the average is based off of the average daily membership, which is really just meant to be informational and so you can compare the two. As you can see, Asheville City Schools would end up around 15% with 3 projects. Buncombe County School would be at that 85% with 6 projects that would be approved using this methodology. Looking at our priority-based method, the one that we use now, we're looking at about 20-80% with an additional project to Asheville City Schools and 1 pulled away from Buncombe County Schools. So that concludes the information, and now I hand it over to you all to discuss and determine what projects you would like to recommend to the Board of Commissioners.
So let's begin here with, so there were some Asheville City Schools, I think there were some questions and some interest in some certain projects. Let's start with those. Did anybody have any specific questions or comments on some of those projects?
I have a question for Clark. If we could pull up scenario 1 again.
Sorry.
So regarding the Sandhill Venable re-roofing, while I think that the roofs, obviously they're on our priority list, but the truth of the matter is, like, all those roofs can't be done in a year. Clark, can you just speak to the capacity that we're at as far as our roofing jobs go?
Yes,
As far as that scenario goes, and then also if you can speak to if there is a way for that phase 2 mechanical system upgrade to sort of shrink that a little bit.
okay. So we analyze and utilize all of our funding sources we start our capital process as a team and a committee approach and look at our Article 4042 funds, Article 39 funds, and also lottery funds. So we have 4 roofing projects that were approved previous years in Article 39 that we have not completed yet. And we also have approved some this year in our 4042 budget that will basically give us enough roof work this year. That's about all we can manage and all that the roofing contractors in this area can manage. So
Right.
that's why we prioritize the roofing in this particular request, how we prioritized it.
As far as further down on the list.
Correct.
That
The,
helps. I was wondering about that as well.
Yeah.
as far as the mechanical project at North Buncombe High, yes, we could reduce the value of that if need be. I think we could easily take $500,000 off of that and still have a significant impact on that school as a phased approach.
Okay. And then I know originally on the original request, the project at Valley Springs was prioritized over the Sand Hill project. I think that probably that shift just happened to make the numbers work. Is that right? Is that right, Paige?
Yes, it is. It's just trying to get something close to that
Yeah.
15 and add another project in there.
So if we did the Valley Springs job in a more phased approach, could we do a smaller allocation on that to get us to the, you know, if we do find that it is allowed to be, if more proportional, would you say that that's more of a priority, getting that job started?
Yes, I think if
Because
we,
Sand Hill wouldn't even be able to be done next year essentially, as far as that roof goes, is that right?
correct,
There's not even the capacity to do that roof next year.
correct.
Okay, thank you.
So let me ask this, thank you. Okay, so we're talking about, so let's focus on Buncombe County Schools then with this. So we're looking at the security upfits, of course, we always do that.
Yeah.
The W.D. Williams, which is phase 2, which we always try to keep the phase going.
Yeah.
And then the security upfits, it's got the guardhouse in there for the 2.2. It's got the North Buncombe phase 2, which we definitely want to keep going. And that's where you're saying potentially,
You could drop it to 2 million.
if you were, because you were wanting to try to get the athletic fields in, is that?
We would like to get those athletic fields, the process started for sure.
Okay, and can you tell me more about why that one's such a priority to get that one started? Help me understand that better, please.
Right now, the students at Valley Springs have to travel across the road to practice at TC Robertson, and they're, TC is our largest high school, and it's just the capacity of our athletic facilities is tight right there. So it's hard for the middle school children to get the, I guess, necessary playing time or necessary field time, and this would create a more, a better situation for that district for sure.
And help me understand, I know we've got some of the lobby security updates in here. And I just can't help but always think about, because when I go around the schools, that's what I hear from folks is those other schools want those lobby security upfits. So help me understand why we would want to go ahead and start working on phase 1 of the athletic fields versus doing more security, the lobby security upfits.
Can I ask a
So
second
the-
part to that question as well, Clark, because it does tie in?
Okay.
Help me understand along those lines too, because as we are out and about, Commissioner Wills is correct that, we do hear about the lobby security upfits. Why would the guardhouse right now be prioritized over trying to get as many of those lobby upfits
So-
as possible?
So again, it's kind of like roofing. We can only do so much in a year's time. We can only disturb so many schools. Some of these are pretty offensive. Some have to be done in the summertime because we can't literally, where they're located, depends on the school, we can't interrupt the flow of school, that aggressively. And we have looked at that big picture and know what we can handle in a year's time. And to speak on the guardhouse is actually going to provide a level of perimeter security that we've been working on in a phased approach as well for our high schools. So high schools they're different than our other schools because you have a lot of student traffic in and out. And just a lot more traffic in general in and out of a high school campus than a elementary or middle school campus. So we have completed 4 of our 6 high schools already with this traditional guardhouse model, and Reynolds is next on the line, and it actually secures 2 campuses instead of 1. TC will be one that will be coming in the future. It does currently have a guardhouse, just not to the standard of what we're building.
Clark, can you speak, because we keep calling this like a guardhouse project, but really the scope is much bigger than that. Can you speak a minute on the scope of that?
So during the daytime, after the school day starts, it's actually will provide complete perimeter security for Reynolds High and Reynolds Middle. You will not be able to get onto those campuses in a vehicle without going through some kind of a vetting process. So that's a first level of security. And then once, Reynolds High currently has a completed lobby entrance. So then at Reynolds High, you have that whole nother level of security to get through to get into the building.
And I know part of this this cost is actually, which we talked a lot about in our capital committee as far as student safety at Reynolds when they're trying to walk down towards 74. Can you speak to like the extent as far as sidewalks and paving goes on that project as well?
Yeah, this project is more than just a guardhouse. It's also upfitting Rocket Drive, which has for years been, understanding the ownership of Rocket Drive took some time. Now that we know that it's ours, that we can maintain it or need to maintain it, then this funding request will also upfit the asphalt on Rocket Drive and also create a safe path for the students to get down to 74 that use public transportation.
So coming into this meeting, I'd had some conversations individually with some of the folks here. And I would think that even though I have a son that goes to Reynolds, that guardhouse, especially on a year when there's only $15 million, would be better. That $2.25 million would be better spent somewhere else. So I did the math and thought, well, you could re-roof, 8, 9, 10, 11, 14, and 15 for basically the same amount of money, a little bit less. But now we're sort of hands are tied because you're saying there's not enough roofing contractors to get the job done, so it wouldn't matter anyway. That's disheartening to think that that's how it works. But then you think, well, if you didn't spend that money on the guardhouse this year, could you do the total replacement of the kitchen? It's a little bit more money, but I mean, if you're sort of comparing the needs of the students. And I would be curious about, and maybe I'm completely wrong, because I do visit the other schools because my children play sports, and so I'll go there. And I don't even recognize the guardhouses. I don't even see them. And I'm sure that there's probably another function of these guardhouses, which is not only to keep people out, but it's probably to keep the students in. Because they're currently at Reynolds, and because my son did it once, he just got in his car and left. And nobody knew he was gone.
And it also provides, they have to check out when they leave. We turn the exit loops off during the day, so you can't just drive up to the gate to open the gate on its own.
And I see that's probably more of what this guardhouse is going to do. It's going to keep kids from leaving and then going to get in an accident or into trouble versus keeping somebody out, especially at Reynolds High, because you already have the security measures that are there in the front lobby. That's the main point of entry. That somebody wants to hurt the children, that's where they're going to come through. They're not going to come in with a truck with explosives in it or something. It's like, you're not trying to, this isn't a U.S. Embassy type situation. It's somebody who's deranged that will walk into the school, I feel. But having said that, it doesn't look like if you wanted to use that money somewhere else, you'd have to go way down on the list.
So, and we take all these projects seriously. So we utilize some of our other funding. We have a full set of drawings to start this work. This is a shovel-ready project that if it is funded, it's important enough to our system we've spent other budget sources to get the design completely done so we can be ready to move forward. Talking about roofing, if it gets funded, right now we have enough roofing designed already to get going for this summer and for the next year. And if we fund additional roofing, it will take a year to get through that design process to be able to start working on it.
Yeah. So I know that for AB Tech, so the TCC building, the Inca campus, had a bad roof for years and years. I don't know if anybody in the county was dealt with that. I think Ronnie did, yeah. We kept having to fix it, and every time we patched it, it was $8,000-$10,000 to do that, and it went on for years and years. And how much money was spent, and how much money will be spent on all these that we know need to be re-roofed? Is it done in-house, or is there a contractor involved?
We do most of our patching in-house. We have our own crew that does, sometimes we have to contract things depending on the severity of it, but the majority of the repair work is done in-house, our own maintenance staff.
So it's done for cheaper.
Yeah, it's pretty negligible.
Okay.
Well, somebody check my math, but just kind of looking over the things that we just talked about there, counting with the change on the 2,000 for the mechanical and then the change on the athletic is around 12.8. If somebody could check.
12.860.
12.860. And then let's look. Do folks feel good? I don't think, those are the projects that we're really considering for Buncombe County, it sounds like. It sounds like we're all kind of on the same page about looking at those. Okay, and let's go look at that.
I have one more question.
Okay, sure.
Sorry. What are the priority schools for the lobby security outfits?
So that's Inca High School, Johnston Elementary, and North Windy Ridge.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let's see if there's some questions here, comments around the Asheville City School request. Well, I'll start us off because I'm just curious on the lighting. I actually was talking with Chair Newman over the weekend because I had this memory of that there was a big, after he came on the commission, this interest in doing a lot of the lighting retrofits and all that. And so I checked with him and he said yes, and his recollection was that this committee already funded that for all the schools in Buncombe County and Asheville City schools. And that was already done. That was back like around 2017 or so was when those projects were funded. Yeah, they were funded 2017, I think, for the 2018-19 year. So I was just curious if I had misheard about what you were, I was thinking y'all were saying this was LED, but that was funded a few years ago.
That mostly did the common spaces like the hallways, and that was about it. Mostly the hallways, the classrooms, the media center, the cafeteria, they're still all the old fluorescent tubes. Been there since the 60s. But the hallways do look better. I've just took some pictures today where we've been doing some flooring and some asbestos remediation, and with the hallways and the ceiling works, they look really good. And then you step into the classrooms and it's the yellowish,
Totally different.
the old
Totally different
worn
atmosphere.
out case work, and the ceilings are kind of weird with the ceiling fans and those slopes and stuff. They're pretty old looking, no doubt.
And that also speaks to the age of the buildings.
That's true.
So so when the project was funded for the county and the city, it was just at that school that it didn't get done?
No, they
at
got
the school?
most all of them, but it was, I guess with the amount of fixtures that were allocated to us, it just behooved us at the time to do those common areas, the hallways and a lot of the larger spaces. And then we've been doing other lighting projects since then too, to try and, beef that up a little bit.
So wait a minute, I just want to make sure. So you're saying all the schools, it was just the hallways that were done, the classroom?
Basically, and not even all of them, like Asheville High School didn't get done, but I can't remember anything at the high school that got done on the LEDs much.
Media center, places like that, but the main building, none of the hallways
Mhm, in
were
the main
upfitted,
building.
and we've been working on those lots, trying to
We'd really
preserve
like
that historical aspect of the school,
And
trying
we've
to.
been looking into an LED project for the main building also for just those reasons, but Jones is even kind of worse off than the high school is, believe it or not.
Okay.
While I'm sympathetic to lighting issues, as I look at the two scenarios up here, I am deeply concerned that the one big project that directly supports students is not being proposed, and that's the culinary for the CTE. And that's a direct feeder to our community college, should be a direct feeder. And I would propose that we consider funding that over the concession stand restroom facility at the track at the middle school. I'm also concerned about accessibility issues and legal issues by not having a working elevator. So I think that we need to consider those two projects over the middle school concession stand project.
So if we fund 1, 2, 4, and 6, that's 2.484 million.
Good math.
Wait, which ones did you just?
I have a calculator.
So let me make sure. So you said which ones did you just say?
1, 2, 4, and 6.
Okay, but she's saying not two. So one.
No, she was saying not the concessions.
Not the
Just-
concessions, not the one.
Oh, I'm looking at it. Oh, I'm looking at it different.
The restroom changing facility
Okay.
for softball is gonna
Okay.
end up being a Title IX issue if we don't address it. I think.
I'm looking at my old list, so my.
I think that was their concern.
Yeah,
also,
I mean, as I look around on all of these requests, like what's checking off the most boxes in terms of our 4 categories, that I should be clear, that was a top concern for me, is where are we getting the most categories checked off, and protecting our schools from lawsuits as well. Y'all don't have enough money for that.
Okay, so the restroom is what we're talking about, the culinary space, the elevator, and the security upgrades, which is 110. And you said that's how much?
2.484 million.
Okay. So if we totaled up both of those requests, we'd come in what, 15.3 thereabouts?
That's it, yeah.
Or are we okay to do that additional 300?
I'll charge you extra.
I'm good for it.
Let's just make sure we walk through this list collectively. We have one crucial job here.
Yes,
Let's just make sure we got the right projects, the right amounts.
let's do.
Gotta make sure I know what they want.
So let's start on the Asheville City School request, and sorry, I'm looking at the old list, but it's the AMS restroom and changing facility.
So security upgrades first, right?
And the AHS culinary space, AHS elevator replacement, and the recurring security upgrades.
Yes.
Okay,
And no changes to amounts, correct?
No changes
Those
to
are
what?
pretty.
no
good.
changes to
presented.
amounts.
I don't think we moved those numbers,
Yeah.
I
Okay.
think so.
Okay. And then on the Buncombe County, alrighty, we've got the priority school, all the security updates. W.D. Williams Elementary Phase 2, A.C. Reynolds High Guardhouse and Rocket Drive renovations, priority school lobby security updates, North Buncombe High Phase 2 with the adjustment to 2 million in order to be able to do the Valley Springs Middle athletic field renovations Phase 1, which would be 1.144. All right, 1,144,000, is that,
I think it's 1.2 if we're
Okay.
okay with the overage, whenever I was doing it proportionally.
okay, did that
That gets you to 15.3.
Yeah,
Did that
that's
get us
right.
to the 15.3? Okay, okay. So are we all on the same page? And we're good? 0.3? Excellent work there. Okay. Any final questions or comments?
Some curious page, refresh my memory here. So next year, do you have any idea how much money we're gonna have?
Do you have that crystal ball?
I wish I did. So we can look back at, my forecasted amount for next year is around 42.8 was where our fund balance will land. And then, total revenues would be 29 for Article 39, and then, our expenditures for that year would be around 52. Are you asking about
Is that
FY?
taking away debt service cost and that's just the bulk number, that's the.
That's the bulk, so that's debt service and what we're projecting the schools will spend throughout that fiscal
Subject to
year.
change.
Yes, yeah.
We need our crystal ball.
I know. Send
Is
me
that
one.
not on here?
Did that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
All right. Well, thank you all very much. We appreciate it. Good work. Thank you, staff. Did you have something else, Paige?
I just think we need to take an action to,
Oh, yes. I was just so excited that we came to that agreement. Okay, so I stated all of the projects there. Do we have a motion to approve the projects that I stated for Asheville City Schools and Buncombe County Schools?
Second.
So moved in second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you very much. George, can you?
Yep, I'm an I as well.
Thank you. Thank you for clarifying. Thank you for keeping me on track there with that motion too. Okay, now that we have done that. Anything else?
Just a reminder that the next meeting will be July 15th, in room 310. Also not a reminder and everything, but that will be kind of our administrative meeting. We'll plan for the next year.
3 p.m. for that, our usual time?
Yes.
All right, wonderful. Okay, thank you very much. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So
moved.
Second?